There's a strange moment when you realize someone may want a future with you, and you're not even sure you believe you're the kind of man someone could choose that seriously. Maybe you felt it before. A woman looks at you a little longer than usual. She remembers something you said weeks ago. She seems unusually comfortable around you, but you can't tell whether she's interested or simply being kind. So you do what many men do. You analyze it. You replay the conversation while driving home. You notice when she replied. You notice when she didn't. You tell yourself you're not thinking about her while thinking about her. And somewhere underneath all that, there may be a quieter question. Would someone actually choose me? Not for a night. Not because she was bored. Not because you happen to be available. But choose you when life becomes ordinary, when the excitement settles, when there are difficult mornings, bills, disagreements, responsibilities. That question can reach surprisingly deep, because sometimes a man doesn't fear rejection nearly as much as he fears confirmation. Confirmation that the reason nobody has stayed is because there's something wrong with him. And I want you to stay with that thought for a moment, because this is where things become interesting. You may think this story is about discovering who wants to marry you. But before we get there, there's something you need to notice about the way you respond when someone genuinely begins moving closer. Because a man can spend years wishing someone would finally see him, and then become uncomfortable when she actually does. Maybe she asks about your plans. Maybe she starts making space for you in her life. Maybe she says something simple like, "I could see us doing that together." And instead of feeling only happy, something tightens inside you. You wonder what she expects. You wonder whether you're ready. You wonder whether you'll disappoint her. And suddenly, the woman you were hoping for becomes the woman you're afraid of losing. That shift matters. If you enjoy conversations like this, quiet, honest conversations about the things people usually hide, subscribe, stay close. Because sometimes the most important relationship insight is the one that makes you uncomfortable before it makes you feel relieved. Now imagine something. Your phone is beside you. It's late. You're about to put it down when a message appears. Not a dramatic confession, just a few words. Something that makes you sit up. Someone has been thinking about you for longer than you realized. Someone has been watching the way you live, the way you handle people, the way you carry disappointment without announcing it. And she isn't interested in the version of you that performs confidence. She's interested in the man underneath it. That can feel almost frightening. Because being admired from a distance is easy. Being truly known is different. And there is one particular kind of woman who may recognize your value long before you recognize it yourself. But she usually doesn't reveal herself in the way you expect. In fact, you may have been looking in completely the wrong direction. And when you understand what she has actually been noticing about you, one ordinary memory, one conversation you probably forgot, may suddenly look very difficult. There's a kind of attention that doesn't feel like attention at first. It feels ordinary. A question here, a small joke there. A woman remembering that you don't like crowded places, asking whether your meeting went well, sending you something because it reminded her of a conversation you had weeks ago. Nothing dramatic, and that's exactly why men sometimes miss it. We're often trained, directly or indirectly, to look for obvious signs. A bold message, a confession, someone making their intentions impossible to misunderstand. But real emotional interest can be much quieter. Someone may not be trying to impress you. She may simply be trying to understand you. Think about the last time a woman asked you, "Are you okay?" And you answered, "Yeah, I'm fine." Maybe she looked at you for another second. Maybe she didn't push. Maybe she just said, "Okay," and changed the subject. You probably thought nothing of it. But there's a possibility she noticed something you were trying not to show. The tiredness in your voice. The way you became quieter. The fact that you answered too quickly. And sometimes that's what makes genuine connections so unsettling. You can hide from someone who only sees your words. It becomes much harder to hide from someone who notices the spaces between them. Now, I want you to be careful here. Not every woman who remembers details is secretly planning a wedding. Not every kind gesture means romantic interest. People can be caring for many reasons. But when several small behaviors begin forming a pattern, when someone consistently makes room for you, becomes curious about your inner world, and seems to care about how you feel rather than simply how you appear, That can mean something. And there's another detail that matters even more. How does she behave when you're not performing, when you're not funny, when you're not successful, when you're not trying to look unbothered? Because attraction can begin with appearance, confidence, charm. But emotional attachment often develops through repeated experiences of safety and understanding. Imagine sitting across from her after a difficult day. You don't tell the whole story. You just say, "It was a rough one." And instead of immediately giving you advice, she stays there. No interrogation, no pressure, just presence. You look down at the table. Then you realize something uncomfortable. You actually want to tell her. That desire to be known without having to defend yourself can be powerful, especially if you've spent years believing that being strong means carrying everything alone. And maybe that belief helped you survive certain periods of your life. Maybe you needed it. But there comes a point when protection can become isolation. You stop asking for help because you don't want to look needy. You stop explaining what hurts because you don't want to be misunderstood. You stop saying what you want because wanting something gives another person the ability to disappoint you. So you become very good at needing nothing. And then one day, someone enters your life who doesn't seem impressed by that act. She doesn't chase the distant version of you. She doesn't reward the silence. She simply keeps showing you, in small ways, that you don't have to perform around her. That can create a strange conflict. Part of you moves toward her. Another part whispers, "Don't get too comfortable." Because if you let yourself believe she cares, you might have something to lose. And this is where many men make a mistake. They assume their fear means something is wrong with the woman. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes fear simply means something matters. But there's one way to tell the difference. Watch what happens when you stop trying to control the outcome. Because the woman who genuinely sees a future with you may not be the one making the biggest promises. She may be the one quietly showing you something much more revealing, that she already has a place for you in the life she's imagining. And once you notice where that place is, you may realize she's been telling you for months without ever actually saying the words. Maybe you're thinking about her now. Not because I told you to, because a particular face just appeared in your mind. And perhaps what makes you uncomfortable is that she isn't the woman you expected. Maybe she isn't the one who gave you the most attention. Maybe she wasn't the most obvious flirt. Maybe, in fact, she was the woman you almost overlooked because nothing about her behavior felt dramatic. That's worth sitting with, because there is a difference between being wanted and being valued. They can look similar from the outside. They feel very different from the inside. Being wanted can make you feel exciting. Being valued can make you feel safe. And if you've spent a long time measuring your worth through attention, you may initially mistake the first for the second. Think about someone who only seems interested when you pull away. You become distant, she becomes curious. You become unavailable, she suddenly wants your attention. You start moving toward her, and she becomes less responsive. That dynamic can create enormous emotional tension. You find yourself checking your phone more, wondering what changed, trying to get back to the version of the relationship where you felt wanted. But sometimes what keeps us emotionally attached isn't closeness, it's uncertainty. And uncertainty can make ordinary moments feel strangely intense. That doesn't mean the other person is intentionally manipulating you. Sometimes two people simply have different attachment patterns, different fears, or different ideas about closeness. But there's a quieter kind of connection that doesn't make you constantly wonder where you stand. You can breathe around it. You can disagree without feeling that the entire relationship is disappearing. You can have a bad day without worrying that your value has suddenly dropped. And that kind of relationship may feel almost boring at first if your nervous system has become accustomed to emotional unpredictability. I know that sounds strange, but think about it. If you're used to chasing reassurance, consistent affection can feel unfamiliar. You might even question it. Why is she so calm? Why isn't she making me prove myself? Why doesn't she disappear when I stop performing? And maybe that's exactly the woman you should be paying attention to. Not because she's guaranteed to be the one. Nobody can know that from a few signs. But because the way someone makes you feel over time can reveal something important about the relationship itself. Now picture a very ordinary afternoon. you're walking beside her. There's no romantic music, no perfect lighting. She's talking about something completely unimportant. A grocery list, a family story, something funny that happened at work. You're barely listening to the actual details because you suddenly notice how comfortable the silence feels when she stops talking, and you think, I could live like this. That thought can be more meaningful than fireworks, because marriage, if two people eventually choose it, isn't built from constant excitement. It's built from thousands of ordinary moments. The person who sits beside you when you're exhausted, the person who knows when to speak and when to give you space, the person who can see your strength without requiring you to be strong every second, and perhaps most importantly, the person who doesn't make you abandon yourself just to keep her. That last part matters, because sometimes a man becomes so afraid of losing someone that he starts negotiating against his own needs. He says yes when he means no. He hides disappointment. He becomes whoever he thinks will be easiest to love. And eventually, even if she stays, he doesn't feel loved. He feels managed. So if there really is someone thinking about marriage with you, the question isn't only, who is she? There's another question. Who are you becoming when you're around her? Because the answer may tell you more than her messages ever could. And there is one moment, usually a very small one, when a woman's feelings can become visible without her intending to reveal them. It happens when she sees you at your least impressive, when there's nothing to gain from pretending. And what she does next can tell you whether she is attracted to the image of you or quietly attached to the man himself. Imagine she sees you on one of those days when you have nothing to prove. You're tired. Maybe your clothes aren't perfect. Your mood is flat. You're not telling stories. You're not making her laugh. You're just there. And she doesn't seem disappointed. She doesn't suddenly become colder. She doesn't look past you for the more impressive version. She stays. Maybe she asks, "Did you eat?" Such a small question. But sometimes care enters a man's life through ordinary sentences. Not declarations, not grand gestures. Just someone noticing that you've been carrying too much. And if you're not used to being cared for, you may not know what to do with that. You might joke. You might change the subject. You might say, "I'm fine." Again, because accepting care requires something many men rarely talk about. It requires letting yourself be seen as someone who needs things. Attention, affection, patience, reassurance, understanding. None of that makes you weak. But if you've spent years protecting your independence, it can feel strangely vulnerable. There's another moment that tells you even more. You disagree, not a dramatic fight, just a genuine difference. You want one thing, she wants another. And for a second, you watch her face carefully. You're waiting for the withdrawal, the coldness, the punishment, the feeling that one wrong sentence could cost you the relationship. But she doesn't disappear. She says, "I understand why you see it that way." And you realize something. You can remain yourself here. That is rare. And it changes attraction. Because emotional closeness isn't simply about how intensely two people feel. It's also about whether each person can remain a separate human being while becoming closer. You don't have to surrender your boundaries to prove love. She doesn't have to surrender hers either. That balance can create a kind of confidence that doesn't need constant reassurance. And perhaps that's why the woman who wants a serious future with you may not be the one who makes you feel the most anxious. She may be the one who makes you feel strangely calm, the one you can sit beside without filling every silence, the one you can disappoint without fearing abandonment, the one who can tell you the truth without trying to humiliate you, and the one who doesn't need you to be perfect before she respects you. Now maybe there's a woman you've pushed away because of exactly this. Maybe she came closer when you were emotionally unavailable. Maybe you told yourself you weren't ready. Maybe you thought there would always be time. And then life moved. She became quieter. The messages slowed down. You noticed her absence only after her presence stopped being guaranteed. That kind of regret is different. Because you're not only missing a person, you're mourning a possibility. The possibility of what might have happened if you had been honest sooner. And sometimes, years later, a man remembers a conversation almost word for word, where they were sitting, what she was wearing, the expression on her face, and the sentence he never said. I actually care about you. Maybe he was afraid. Maybe he didn't trust it. Maybe he thought showing emotion would give her too much power. So he waited and waited until waiting became the answer. But don't assume the story has to end there. Because sometimes life brings people back, and sometimes it doesn't. Either way, there is something you can learn from the woman who made you realize you wanted more than attention. You wanted connection. You wanted peace. You wanted someone who could know the difficult parts of you and still sit beside you. That realization changes the kind of woman you notice. Suddenly, the question isn't, who wants me the most? It becomes, who sees me clearly, and who do I feel safe enough to see clearly in return? And if there is someone already thinking about marrying you, there may be a reason she has not said it yet. Not because she doesn't know what she wants, but because she may be waiting to discover one final thing, whether the man she sees is willing to stop hiding from what he wants too. Maybe the person you've been trying to identify isn't hidden at all. Maybe you already know. You just haven't allowed yourself to believe it. Think about the woman who has remained strangely consistent, the one who doesn't need to create jealousy to keep your attention, the one who doesn't make you constantly audition for her affection, the one who notices when you're quiet, who remembers what matters to you, who respects your boundaries, who can disagree with you without turning the disagreement into a threat. Maybe she has never said, "I want to marry you," but perhaps she has said other things. What do you want your life to look like in 5 years? Would you ever move for the right person? What kind of home would you want? Do you want children? Questions like these can sound casual. Sometimes they are. But sometimes people ask about the future because they are quietly checking whether their own future could fit beside yours. And that is where the title of this conversation becomes less mysterious. The woman who wants to marry you may not be the one who makes the biggest romantic gesture. She may be the woman who has been quietly studying compatibility, not judging you, not testing you, just wondering, could we actually build a life together? That question is much deeper than attraction. Because attraction asks, do I want you? Compatibility asks, can we live well together? And emotional maturity asks something even more difficult. Can I love you without losing myself? If she is asking herself those questions, you may notice something different in the way she treats you. She may become more honest. She may tell you what she expects. She may introduce you to people who matter to her. She may make plans that naturally include you. And she may become less interested in fantasy and more interested in reality. She wants to know how you handle stress, how you treat people when nobody important is watching, whether you can apologize without turning it into an argument, whether you keep your word, whether you can talk about difficult things without disappearing. Because eventually, everyone becomes ordinary. Everyone gets tired. Everyone has bad moods. Everyone disappoints someone they love at some point. So the woman imagining marriage may not be looking for the man who never makes mistakes. She may be looking for the man who can repair what he damages. And perhaps that is the part you were never taught to value in yourself. Your worth isn't proven by never needing anyone. It isn't proven by always being calm. It isn't proven by having every answer. Sometimes confidence looks much quieter. It looks like saying, I was wrong. It looks like saying, that hurt me. It looks like saying, I want this. And yes, even saying, I'm afraid. There is strength in being able to tell the truth without using that truth as a weapon. So if there is someone in your life right now who seems to see beyond the surface, don't rush to turn every signal into a prediction. Watch the pattern. Let time speak. Pay attention to how you feel around her, not just how intensely you feel about her. And if you recognize something real, don't hide behind endless analysis. Have the conversation. Not a performance, not a test, just honesty. Because sometimes the person standing closest to your future is not waiting for a perfect version of you. She's waiting to find out whether the real version of you is willing to step forward. And maybe, after all the years of wondering whether someone would choose you, the deeper question was never whether you were worthy of being chosen. It was whether you were finally ready to choose too. So look back at that woman, the quiet one, the consistent one, the one whose presence feels different from the attention you once chased. Maybe you already know who she is. And maybe the next 5 minutes of your life don't need to be spent figuring out whether she wants you. Maybe they need to be spent asking yourself something much harder. If she opened the door to a real future with you tonight, would you have the courage to walk through it?